The mailman doesn't deliver on a Sunday.
If you don't like that, you don't like NBA basketball.
Anthony for three. Bang! J.R. Smith! We just saw men fly. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Cleveland! This is for you!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I am Ronan Gaine. Joining me as always, Chris Nambu. The big trade's gone down. We have another KD-led super team. Bradley Beal is headed to Phoenix. The draft is just 3 days away. We're going to be taking a look at some of the outsiders, but still lottery picks that maybe aren't getting enough highlights, enough talk on them, and possibly some lower down guys that could produce to a higher level than likely their draft pick. But before we get into that, just want to say thanks to all of you for listening, and make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and we'll keep producing that content. Chris, what's going on? How are you?
What's up, man? I'm good. I'll give full disclosure here. We just got done talking about, we're going to talk about the Suns. And I feel like there's been so much news happening ever since the championship that I totally forgot about Frank Vogel and the Suns. So this just goes to show the just how much news changes and how much there is to forget. I probably forget more than I remember on a day-to-day basis with the NBA. But we got the draft on Thursday, and we got to get into it. There are a couple names we want to talk about, but of course, we got to go Bradley Beal first. Man, like, First reaction. What's your gut take on that? Because I was preparing for a Heat meeting there. Maybe he's going to go to the Heat. I was thinking maybe thinking about a Celtics move, and I'm glad they didn't, because we talked about why that was a terrible idea. But I thought it felt like all signs were pointing to the Heat, and now we got the Suns coming out of nowhere, and they're just all in on this team they got here. And I can't lie to you, I feel like first reaction that I had was just thinking about, all right, the Nets just did something similar. And these are different players, and we'll get into why maybe that's the wrong gut reaction to have. But you put all your chips into three players, and this is the complete opposite of what the CBA was meant to do. The CBA was meant to prevent teams from really going all in on three players. And they're like, we don't care. We have Kevin Durant, we have Devin Booker. They just combined for 7 points in the playoff game. And if we had just a little bit more, then we're beating the now championship team, the Denver Nuggets. And they're doing it, and kudos to them. But Ronan, first thoughts. What's your gut feeling now that Brad Beal, the real deal, is out there in Phoenix?
I mean, it's obviously it's cool. You always love when these teams get put together, because you just think of what could be on the offensive side. We could see absolutely outrageously good offensive play, but the main hook for this Phoenix team wasn't their offense. Their offense could easily play through Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. That wasn't any other issue. It was their defense, and now they've gone all in on this. They've gone all in on this new big three. Kevin Durant obviously just can only function within a big three. He's scared of any other outcome. They've only got 5 players signed right now, and they've committed a hell of a lot of money to them. They've only got Ayton, Booker, KD, Beal, and Cam Payne. They got to build the rest of their roster and build a championship contender, build a team that's capable of beating the Denver Nuggets. And when your defensive core is built on Ayton, Booker, and Durant, I'm thinking that's not going to get you a championship. Their offense, no doubt, is going to be elite. Maybe possibly best in the league by a mile. But defensively, I think they're going to leave a lot to desired, and I don't think it makes that difference for them that they needed.
Yeah, that's obviously going to be the most difficult thing. It's the depth. I mean, that's my first question too. It's how much depth are you going to put together now that I believe they will not be able to sign any MLEs now that they have Durant, they have Booker, they have Beal. Under the new CBA, you can't go out and offer a Jay Crowder-esque player an MLE. You can't go offer a Dylan Brooks type of guy with MLE, a Joe Ingles, a just going down the line, a Jeff Green type of player, Justice Winslow kind of. Those are guys that can command MLEs, and those are important contracts. I mean, you saw what a guy like Bruce Brown did for the Nuggets. I mean, you get guys like that on those bargain contracts, guys like that who fit your team, your culture, what you're trying to do with this amount of talent. Like, that's what really pushes you over the edge. And it's going to be tough for them to find that. But I mean, they're going to be working with vet minimums. And I thought, we might as well address that question right now. Biggest thing that they're missing right now in your head, not just the depth, but from what position are you feeling like they're lacking the most?
I guess center and would you say wing was wing the right? Is it center wing depth? Is that what you're kind of looking at because of what the struggles you see from Ayton and the likelihood that they may have to move Ayton to try and just add that little bit more depth, but they're kind of the main spots because obviously they got the guards, they got you don't worry too much when you have Campaign, you have Booker, you have Beal. So you think that'll kind of take care of itself, but the front court is kind of where you kind of look at it and you think there's not as many options as they have in terms of kind of backcourt support that they can get in compared to the front court.
Yeah, I think the wing is an interesting answer to that because I think for me is like either you're worried about the wing, but you're definitely worried about the point guard, and that depends on like how the Suns want to play this. Depends how Frank Vogel wants to set this team up offensively. Is Devin Booker going to be more of a lead guard, have the ball in his hands, having him take the ball to guard? Because he did it in the playoffs. And I think it was fascinating to see him do that because I think a lot of people, including myself, kind of looked at Book as the guy who, they did the point guard experiment. They did the James Harden shooting guard, point guard type thing. And that led to him being an inefficient player, but he's evolved. I mean, he's had tremendous strides, and maybe they look at him as he can be a lead guard. They don't have to worry too much. That's a vet minimum deal that whoever they get in, fine. On the wing, that's a difficult thing because Beal is for all intents and purposes, not a good defender. He's a bad defender. Booker is a much improved defender for sure. I mean, he is a good defender. Just seeing all the effort he put out in the playoffs, what he did, I think proves to me that he can defend 1 through some 3. But I think having Booker on the wing and having Booker also be a primary playmaker, that's something that's going to push him to the limit. And I think that you want to put your best players in easier positions. You don't want to stress a guy who's such a pure scorer, like even just taking the ball out of his hands a little bit to just have like Campaign bring the ball up. Like that's huge for him, for his energy, for the amount that he was doing in the playoffs. I think honestly, a couple of the guys that they have in their team right now, can Josh Okogie come back? Would he be happy to come back? He had his stints at the beginning of the season. He had, crazy run from 3 from the corner, what he was doing as a cutter, what he's been doing as a cutter his whole career in the open court. That's a guy that I think, they might want to keep around. Even Torrey Craig might want to keep him around. But when you look on the free agent market, that's where it gets a little tough. You want to keep TJ Warren, but that's not exactly the kind of wing that you want to keep. I think some people are thinking maybe give him a second chance from an offensive point of view, but I think they have plenty of offense to go around. They need guys who are going to be able to switch. They need guys who are going to be able to play big. Because, like you said, the big situation is tenuous. You don't know if Ayton's going to be your center here, and I think that's a lot of posturing. I think there's no news right now like, oh, they're going to move on from Ayton. But I think given the amount of change and the fact that Chris Paul is leaving, there may not be as much value to Ayton. Ayton could have a tremendous opportunity here to play with these guys again. But you don't know. So you need a guy who's gonna be able to play big too. The list is pretty thin. People have brought up Yuta. Yuta's a shooter. Yuta's not really going to be able to take on any opportunities on defense at the 4 position. Interestingly enough, Jalen McDaniels, a guy who I don't think would be a unrestricted. I don't think he would be a vet minimum type of guy. So that there are guys on the market that potentially could be that guy. But I don't think they're going to be able to afford them. That's going to be the tough part. So they're going to have to stick, I think, with if Okogie and Craig are willing to come back, that might be the best thing that they can do from the wing position.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Then in terms of bigs, do you think there's any way they could afford either Pirtle or Brook Lopez, or you just think there's no chance on that?
They'd have to be. I mean, are they the kind of guy that are just like, just give me a champ? I want in on a championship. Let's do it. If that were the case, then why wouldn't Brook just stay with Milwaukee?
Yeah, no.
Why wouldn't he do that?
Fair. I think he'd be more likely to. I think he's happy in Milwaukee. I think he's found a good place for him there. I would just think, from a Suns point of view, I would be aggressively pursuing a guy like Brook Lopez.
So if we're just talking about like we're just talking about guys in the market, let's go through them right now. Brook Lopez, no. Vucevic, no. Pirtle, no. And from a financial point of view, like he is now entering the prime of his career and now being regarded as one of the best shot blockers in the league. Why is he going to take vet minimum? He's not. And the thing with the vet minimum too, I think it's very easy for I think Suns fans, any fans of teams that have just received a star and are entering a period of contention are like, hey, why wouldn't he come here to win a championship? Well, listen, I mean, that's not the only team that can win a championship. There's plenty of other teams out there. And for these guys, the second you take a vet minimum contract, that's it. Like, you're a vet minimum guy. Like, it's very hard, and I can't think of any players off the top of my head. When you take a vet minimum contract, that's what you're getting for pretty much the rest of your career. So anyone who's under the age of 30, it's not happening. Under the age of 34, really, it's very rare for it to happen unless you're pure like mid-late rotation kind of guy. Mason Plumlee, maybe, sure. I mean, does that get you excited? I mean, not really. He's fine. He does things. Naz Reid, man, he would be fun, right? Like what he's done off the bench for the T-Wolves, really being one of the best shooting bigs in the league. He's not taking a vet min, definitely not. Here's one guy. I don't know if I love this option necessarily, but Thomas Bryant, he's a young guy that might have to take a vet minimum.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, like he's one of those young players in a situation where it's like people are kind of forgetting who he is. People are forgetting that he plays basketball because he just won a championship and no one even knew he was on the team. And he's done some things in Washington where like you could see him being a starting big in this league, but it hasn't showed up. I mean, is Drew Eubanks, if they bring back Bismack Biyombo, I mean, the Bismack Biyombo looked like a child playing next to Jokic. Again, that's terrible. Everyone's going to look pretty bad. But it just goes to show there's definitely a lack of obvious answers in free agency.
The obvious answer is there, Chris. Come on. Dwight Howard, get him back in there. No better.
Hey, no, okay. Seriously though. Can Dwight Howard play 15 minutes a game? Can Dwight Howard play 15 minutes a game? It's Vogel. Does he trust to bring him back? You just need a guy who's going to be able to play in the drop, who's going to be able to give you a little rim protection. So I don't know, is that an upgrade over Biyombo? Maybe. Probably. Ish. A little bit. I mean, Biyombo's not, gives you some rim protection. But yeah, again, there's no obvious answers here. And that's from the center position. You don't know if there's maybe a way to fix that by trading Ayton. I mean, you're the one who brought that up. We'll get back to that. Or maybe do you want to get into that now, or we get into the point guards a bit of it?
We'll go point guard.
Okay. That one's, I think, is a little bit easier. A little bit easier. Gabe Vincent. Before anyone says Gabe Vincent, dude, guys, Gabe Vincent is not taking a vet minimum deal. That's just not happening. But some people that I think would. You got Pat Bev, Javon Carter, Reggie Jackson, Corey Joseph. Guys who are serviceable point guards, especially, I mean, Pat Bev and Javon Carter, that does that does a lot for me. That does a lot for me.
Mm.
You need guys next to Book. You need guys next to Beal that are going to be able to hold it down defensively. And those are guys that absolutely can hold it down defensively. I mean, hell, if you even got both, if you manage to get both those guys, just get a little bit. You always have one of those guys on the floor, just flying around, playing defense, giving effort, and I mean that's the least that you can ask. I don't love the idea of Campaign playing 28, 30 minutes a night at the point guard position. I have nightmares about it, really. It's not. I saw it for years in Chicago, and never want to see it again. And for all the random moments that he had in Phoenix, it never culminated when it mattered. And I think he's a guy that's a spark plug, and not a guy that you want to run too much offense there. So I mean, those names right there. I think you can find a serviceable backcourt with any one of those 5 names: Pat Bev, Javon Carter, Reggie Jackson, Corey Joseph, guys who would actually take the vet minimum and would actually just be tremendous in that team.
Yeah, guys like George Hill and Dennis Schroeder as well. Like obviously, I think Schroeder.
Yeah.
If Schroeder's going to continue, he'll probably go back to the Lakers. But
yeah,
those guys are there too. They're capable enough, and they're definitely with what the money you're working with. They have to be options. Could they end up bringing in a guy like Danny Green in? I guess possibly.
Can he still play? I don't know.
But who knows? But I mean, the options are going to keep getting thinner and thinner because I mean, not every single player in the league is going to want to be available for the Suns, so they're going to have to keep their options very broad. And I think we looking at it before. They've only got 1 second-round pick this year, so I mean, they've only got 5 players signed. Like they really have to be smart here, and they have a lot of players to sign to bring in to have a complete roster and have a team that's not going to be centered around just the big 3, and then those guys are going to be burned out by the time they get to the playoffs. That's not what they want either.
Yeah. I think from a point guard perspective, it'll be fine. The wing position, like we talked about, will be tough, and the center position, we'll see. Let's talk now about Ayton. But one name to mention though is Jock Landale. I don't know the ins and outs well enough to know what that negotiation will look like because he's only on a 1-year deal. They do have his cap hold, but if Jock Landale stays for a minimum, that's just a massive win for the Suns. I mean, he did way more than he should have had to do in the playoffs. I mean, to the point where Monty was playing him over Ayton down the stretch in certain games. But depth-wise, I mean, that's a name to look out for. But Ayton, what's our final answer? Is do you have what do you have up your sleeve? Are you trading him for? Do you have motivation to trade him, or does he now find himself in a just as good of a situation, if not better, than he was last year?
I mean, for him as a player, I think he's in the best in a great situation. Like, why would you want to leave a team that are all in on winning that title and all in on having the best possible team, the best possible offense as a player like Ayton? Why would you want to leave that? But then again, from a Suns point of view, we just saw Ayton get absolutely dominated by the number 1 team, who are the number 1 team now in the West. And are you really thinking, oh, no bother, we'll just come back again next year and Ayton will be better? Do you really have that belief? I think from Ayton's point of view, I think he's living the dream. I think he's happy out there. But from a Suns point of view, if you're really going all in on this, winning this title, you have to be exploring your options with Ayton.
Yeah, it's really tough, man, because players like, I mean, you saw LeBron do this. LeBron was so good that teams questioned, like, are our players good enough? And the answer is, when you compare him to LeBron James, that no, they're not. You're not going to find a wing to stop LeBron James. You're not going to find a wing to be better than LeBron James. The answer is Jokic is an all-time great player. And I think teams are going to have to get away from, and the media especially, are going to have to get away from, looking at the performances of other players in comparison and saying, hey, they didn't figure it out against him. Maybe they need to change things up. I think the answer is is more than just Ayton getting a replacement for Ayton. Because honestly, I think there's no player outside of getting someone like Joel Embiid or even Jakob Poeltl. You can't name a defensive big that's going to stop what Jokic does ever. And somehow Jokic has snuck his way into this podcast. I don't know how. But Ayton's offense, though, I think that's where the concern is. For him, not for us. I think Ayton being a fourth option on this team makes him have the easiest life ever. Like there are times where he really took advantage of this season, like when they would stretch the floor out, space out the floor with Durant, and bend defenses with Devin Booker working in the pick and roll. Like Ayton would just be wide open for pick and pops, and he loves that game. He loves that mid-range pick and pop. He loves maybe on a switch, he's going to get a smaller guy to go to work with in the posts. And I think he had some good moments in the DHO. But that's going to have to happen a lot more, the playmaking aspect. I don't know how well he's going to do as a playmaker, because that's going to be a major requirement from his end, is to be a facilitator. Because I think Brad Beal, if we take a look at how he plays, I mean, he's an excellent off-ball mover. Same thing with Book. Book plays so well off the ball when he's given that opportunity. And you take away Chris Paul, and so much of the offense is now going to have to run through their shot-happy guards. And these are guards that are fantastic shooters. These are guys who are going to really make really good offense. But does that therefore mean that, Ayton kind of disappears from that picture completely? Because Chris Paul is setting him up all the time. I mean, we saw Ayton blossom once Chris Paul got there, and that really did wonders for his efficiency. That did wonders for him to develop as a player. And now that he doesn't have that point guard, now that it's such a tenuous situation for him in Phoenix to begin with, does it even make sense for him as a player to continue here for himself, to be a fourth option on this team, even if that means a championship? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's tough. I guess how much belief does he have in his own playmaking? How is he going to be accepting of playing that role is another question. It's obviously the biggest decision for any player to make, especially a guy like him. Came into the league as a number one overall pick, thought he was going to be this top level consistent all-star player, and slowly but surely he's kind of fallen down the pecking order in Phoenix. And now it's in a situation where they're all in. They've got 3 elite scorers and shooters on their team, and he's just going to be an afterthought. Can he accept that? I don't know. But can he also think on the side of, I can take great advantage of this. No one's even going to be thinking about me. Teams aren't even going to be thinking about me. I'm going to have so many open looks. I'm going to be able to take advantage of so many people doing double teams on Booker, doing double teams on Durant, on Beal. He's going to have so many open looks. I can really develop my game as a facilitator and be a key contributor on a championship team. That's a big question for Ayton. And I guess you want to say that Ayton is the only one who can decide that, but at the same time, the Suns could turn around tomorrow and say, right, we got a good offer for you. You're out as well. So it's kind of, it's a tough one. It's like, can Ayton bet on himself, or does he just want to go to an easier situation where pressure's off and he can kind of just do what he does? If you want to be a winner, I think he's got to go to option B, stay in Phoenix, accept the role, become a better facilitator, and take advantage of the open spaces and the open looks he's going to get playing with these 3 stars.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. But, Vegas isn't always the best predictor of things, but I mean, Vegas gives us an idea, and Vegas isn't super far off. You look at the top 5 teams that are now being betted to take Ayton to trade for him, and we got the Mavs number 1. I don't know how this would work, but then you look at the Mavs, and actually this is kind of kind of makes sense a little bit. I mean, you look at the amount of contracts they have. They've been able, after moving off of Porzingis, they've split those contracts up, and they've balanced things out, except for having Kyrie now with he's going to be making $39 million next year. But I mean, you got a Davis Bertans, you got a Dwight Powell, you got a Maxi Kleber, you have a JaVale McGee. You have guys that, if we're talking about this front court problem that the Suns are going to have, filling that up and getting guys who play defense. I think the way that Vogel's going to want to play won't demand as much switching as they saw with Jason Kidd there in Dallas. But I mean, those are guys that, I think they really want to get in a star center there in Dallas. They want to get a guy that can really have gravity going to the rim. They've never really had that guy. I thought it would be there in Christian Wood. Christian Wood ended up being more of a pick and pop threat. But I mean, that's a team that I think makes a little bit more sense the more you think about it. But I mean, what do you think about that fit? First of all, for Dallas, how motivated would you be for them to make that work? And for Ayton, how excited would he be to then be getting to work with a guy like Doncic and a guy like Irving who could really facilitate in the pick and roll, who could really facilitate a big in the post?
Yeah, I think that will be a good fit for Ayton. I think anywhere where there's an elite point guard, I think Ayton will be capable of thriving. It's just a question with Dallas. I'd be looking at him thinking, okay, so instead of improving the defense is what you need to do, you're actually going to make it worse. That's the angle you're going for, and you're going for offense again. I mean, that's where I look at it from a Dallas point of view. From an Ayton point of view, from the fit, I think Doncic would be happy with a guy like Ayton. I think Ayton would be delighted to play with a guy like him. You see Kyrie possibly play a bit more off ball in that situation. You think they could produce similar levels to what we saw Ayton produce alongside CP3 and Booker, which was pretty damn good for large periods. So I mean, the fit is right. It's just a question mark for Dallas. You're kind of like, is this really where you think you're going to improve and definitely get back into the playoffs next year? I'm not so sure.
I think so. They haven't had real production from the center position, and I think Ayton's proven to be. I mean, Ayton's a much better defender than Christian Wood, and I think Christian Wood just has not provided anything defensively, which it's crazy. I probably was the number one Christian Wood fan and thought this was going to go somewhere crazy. This would be his all-star, and that's it's how many times I'm wrong and shows how much I know about basketball, I guess. But what about? I guess I'll answer this for myself. The Bulls are the number 2 on this list, and that's what really shocked me the most. And again, I mean, you look at the Bulls, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, look at the players that they could have from that team: Caruso, Javonte Green, Derrick Jones Jr. I don't know if, again, this is the whole legal thing with it, if he picks up his player option, if that's going to be able to be traded. I think that is the case. I think they could trade that. But even just naming those 3 guys, and even just thinking about the tenure situation with Vucevic, you don't know what Vucevic is going to sign for. You don't know what he's necessarily looking for. But I think everybody knows the elephant in the room is that Vuce, while he's a fantastic player, is not enough for the Bulls, for them to compete. And I really am interested in how this might play out if they did a sign and trade there, because Vuce can do a lot of things that they need. Vuce is he's a very underrated passer. I mean, he's a guy that you can pass the ball to him in the mid post, and I think he can do a lot of things that Ayton cannot do. The playmaking he can do to allow for Booker to continue playing off ball, to allow for Beal especially to be doing that. The pick and pop game, the pick and roll game, and him playing at the low post. I think low post wise, I mean, Ayton is younger, can do that a lot more, gets a lot more opportunity. But I think Vuce really replicates a lot of what Ayton does offensively. And I don't really see a massive drop off between both of them defensively. I mean, Vuce is a better rebounder. That's a fact. He's a better rebounder than Ayton. He's a better passer than Ayton. Not a better shot blocker for sure, but how often are you seeing Ayton block shots? How often are you seeing him make the biggest difference at the biggest stage? Not too often. I don't see why that wouldn't be a huge motivation for them if Vooch was willing to sign a deal that would make sense there for them to pick up Caruso, a guy who has made championship differences, a guy who Vogel freaking loved, a guy who's really able to
Who doesn't
make.
love, what coach wouldn't love Alex Caruso? Let's be
I
honest.
know. I mean, he won a championship with the guy. So I actually see a situation in which they would be getting offensively the center that they need for this system. They'd be getting a point guard who would make a world of a difference defensively for them. And they'd be getting a role player who could fill things in on the wing and make a tremendous impact defensively and in the open court. It's hard to find a combination of role players, star role players like that amongst these teams. And I just injected that with all sorts of Bulls bias there. So I need you to tell me whether or not that's a crazy proposition or not. Let me know.
Do you really think that's how much value you place on a guy like Ayton? You think you get Vooch, Caruso, and who else?
Vooch, Caruso, and Javante. Or maybe either
Just for
Javante or
Ayton?
Dick.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's not showing all your bias there. I mean, that's giving a very favorable deal to a team that need that like kind of need to turn one player into two or three. I actually quite like that. I like that fit both ways. I think I like what you're saying about Vooch. I think the passing would be a big difference maker, and obviously they're not going to be able to get an elite top level center or anything like that. And adding a guy like Caruso's the definition of the type of player any competitor needs. Like, it's simple as that. He's like him, like see Bruce Brown, like we see with many other guys. He's got that dog in him as a defender. He has a nice upside on the offensive end as well. He won't demand the ball too much, but you won't have to worry about the ball being in his hands. And then getting a role player that can definitely just can fill in a few minutes off the bench. That's another thing that they're going to need. I think that's an interesting deal. I think that'd be something that, if it was on the cards, I think both teams would be very interested in that.
Yeah, I saw the Bulls there and I thought it was laughable, and just even starting to dig a little deeper into the opportunity there. It's not something that I think is nothing to look at. Because then you look at the next teams. I mean, the third team would be the Hawks and Clint Capella, or John Collins. I think of the two, Clint Capella would be probably the guy that they'd be a little bit more interested in from a defensive perspective. I don't want to touch Hornets or Magic. Those teams are way too volatile right now. I don't know if there's a 3-team trade you do with the Magic and the Bulls for the Bulls to get their pick back here. But at any rate, I think there's a lot of opportunity for Ayton. And when you ask me about like the value, I think that it's really difficult for. I'll empathize a little bit with Ayton that it takes a lot of sacrifice to win a championship. He could be doing probably bigger things on a non-competing team. That's certainly a possibility. And I think, it's not always about championships for players who have not made their way in this league, who have not achieved what they've wanted to on an individual basis in this league. So maybe from his perspective, that's something. And I think that teams would want to win with him. I think there are teams out there that still see the talent in Ayton and still see the potential for him to do more. And that for whatever reason, that just didn't work out with him in Monty. It didn't work out with him in Phoenix. And, again, maybe this is a moot point. But I think he could still be excellent with his team, and he could compete for a championship with his team. And all it will take is just a little bit of buy-in. But that's to be seen.
Yeah, that's the big thing with Ayton. Obviously, then finish it off. Then Wizards, they got Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, multiple seconds and multiple swaps. They did that just to get rid of their star player. I mean, they were obviously very concerned with getting off that massive contract. That's kind of the way it feels like with this trade. Maybe there was some dodgy dealings going on with Beal. Obviously, his agent is the father of the Sun CEO or whatever.
The son of the CEO of the Phoenix Suns. Yes.
Yeah, like it's interesting, and like I'd be shocked. I think it's almost guaranteed that Chris Paul will never play a game for the Washington Wizards. I'd be shocked to see him playing in a Wizards uniform. Shamet, yeah, just a solid enough player, but I mean, you really didn't get back much for your star. And I know they're trying to loop in possibly a third team into this, and the Clippers are possibly going to pursue getting Chris Paul. But even with that, what are the Clippers really going to offer you? Not that much. So it's going to be interesting to see where the Wizards go from here. Obviously, it was important to them to free up some room to possibly extend both Porzingis and Kuzma. I'd say that's something that they're looking at. And obviously, I guess just
why
have the pressure off. Yeah, no, we won't get into that. Have the pressure off on some of the young guys that they do have, that they can just start to really develop their games as well, because they do have a few young bits of talent, and they're obviously picking in the top 10 as well this year.
Yeah, that would be a shame if they kept it on with Porzingis. I think they need to get out of mediocrity fast. If I am screaming for the Bulls to make changes, I think Washington Wizards fans should be screaming even harder, because the level of mediocrity that they are headed for is the worst. They're not going to be a play-in team, and they're going to be right there at 8. They're going to be right there at 9. They're not going to be the worst team, and it's just time to pull the plug. I mean, Porzingis has no business being on a team like this. I think he could be a contributor for a really good team. There's no business for Kuzma to be on a team like this. He could be contributing on a bigger team, and let your Johnny Davises of the world take over for that kind of team, and see what you have there. Rock with what you got there. Denny Avdia, see what he can do with a little bit more time on the ball. But yeah, that's going to be. I feel really bad for the Wizards, honestly. The moment of silence for the Wizards, because I mean, they had their moments, man. They had their moments with John Wall and Beal and Kelly Oubre and the talent that they had there. And, they were right there battling with the Celtics at times. And I think they had times where, like, they're going to compete to be the best in the East. Look at Beal. He's starting to come up. Beal's an up-and-coming All-NBA caliber player. Then John Wall gets hurt. Beal's hurt all the time. And it's been a very slow burnout to something that should have ended 3 years ago. The fact that they signed this insane contract with this no trade clause, it not only screwed them, but we'll see how this goes for the Suns. This is a massive gamble for the Suns as well. We're not even going to address all the negatives. Like, at the end of the day, like, this is going to be a team that breaks records. The Suns are, but whether or not it pays off with the ultimate prize. I mean, they just took on probably the worst. And when I say worst, I don't mean Bradley Beal is the worst player that's being paid that much, but for a no trade clause as well, player option in the 4th year. I mean, that is the least team friendly deal in the entire NBA, and they just took it on in the middle of their championship window. So that's going to be tough.
Yeah, they've gone on. They've gone all in. They've gone full nets. It's literally championship or bust. If they do not win a championship, this whole experiment is a failure. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Shall we get on to the draft here?
Let's get on to the draft. I think it's time.
Let's do it. I'll pose this to you, because I think this is just fun. There's so many. I suggest, if whoever's listening out there, have not gotten to it, if you are an Athletic subscriber, Sam Vecini does the craziest draft prep, more than we could ever possibly have time to know or get into here. If you're a nerd like that, amazing. If you have not checked out Kevin O'Connor's draft guide, amazing stuff there too. If you're a nerd like me and like to get in all these players, highly suggest it. But I think it's a fun time to just like we say every year, like see some exciting young players and kind of do projections and it's all guesswork. I mean, scouts do it at the best and we do it at the worst, but we still have fun doing it. So that's why we do it every year. So just looking at these players for players not named, Wembanyama, Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, is there any names out there that you've seen where you're like intrigued, where you're interested and you're like catching your eye? Like this could be a player that I'm turning on the television to watch, that I'm excited to see them play.
Oh well, I mean, I think the obvious one is Cam Whitmore. I think he's the kind of guy. Watch his highlight reel. This guy is going to be a walking highlight reel in the NBA. It's just the question mark is that all he's going to be, or is he going to be that difference maker? Is he going to be that kind of guy who's all flash but no real delivery? I think he's got an equal chance. That's where there's kind of some hesitation with him. I think he's got an equal chance of being a guy who's a franchise changer or a guy who's a walking highlight reel, but as the years go on, people just continue to realize that he's doing these great things, but not actually delivering any consistent playoff or championship success.
Yeah, let's jump into Cam because that's a guy that I think is not. He shot up draft boards pretty early, but he's not gotten the same hype that obviously Scoot, Miller, and Wembanyama have, and it's hard to get any hype when everything's about Wembanyama. Like it's hard not to be enamored and stuck on that name, but Cam Whitmore is a fascinating player. I mean, just physically too. I mean, he's near 6'7", 235, 7-foot wingspan, and that 235 that shows on tape. I mean, he's a guy that I think blends really nicely his size with his speed because number one, on offense, like you can't knock him off his shot. Like he really gets to his spots wherever he wants to go, and good defense even isn't going to really rattle him. I mean, he's really able to get wherever he wants to go. And when you get into the low post, I mean, he's got really great footwork too, and he uses his strength and his size to get there. So it's cool to see a player like that, a wing like that, because I think that a lot of these classic lottery style players like Amen Thompson, we'll get into, super athletic wing, could get above the rim, really first step. But Cam Whitmore, not only does he have a great first step, not only does he have a killer crossover and really great handles for his size, but I mean, he can bully down low and he can step through, he can attack switches, he can play in the post. I mean, offensively, I mean, I think he has a lot of potential. But I think you were also absolutely right about the potential, the bust potential for him, because I think if he was getting kind of the praise that I think he should be getting in terms of like what the flashes he's shown offensively, shooting off the bounce and all that I talked about, he also doesn't have a lot of passing chops. We got the lowest assist percentage of probably any lottery pick in years. Just does not play make. He's very much a black hole passing the ball. But at that also, I will say, I don't know how much a product that is of him or Villanova not having a lot of playmakers. They just relied on Cam to get to his shot. But I think there's definitely situations in which he would benefit from not having to be a primary playmaker, from not having the ball too much, a place where he could learn some discipline and figure that out. And do you have any teams that maybe where would you want to see Cam play? Like seeing what he's capable of, seeing the potential, the good side, and also kind of seeing the negatives. Like what team in that kind of like 4 to 7 range, 3 to 7, 8 range, what team would be best suited to develop him?
I guess you'd look at both the Pistons and the Rockets. I think I'd maybe like to see him more in Detroit, because I think obviously they have Cade Cunningham. He's going to be the lead point guard. He's going to be the guy who has the ball in his hands most often. I think playing with a coach like Monty Williams, I think he will demand him to develop his game to become a less selfish player. And there you add that super athletic kind of wing guard combo alongside a guys like Ivy, alongside a guy like Duran. I think the fit is really good there. And especially if his 3-point shot continues to develop, I think it slowly looked better. It's kind of a bit up and down, but if he gains a bit more consistency in that, the Pistons really need that. They need it. They need a guy who can shoot, and if he can do that without, especially as an off-ball player, that makes a huge difference, and that kind of raises his ceiling up that little bit more as well. Maybe then he can develop into getting the ball a bit more. But I think from a starting point, I think the Pistons would be a good fit for him.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of mock drafts are showing him to the Pistons, and I absolutely love that. I love that fit for that exact reason. You have a system that's blossoming right now. I mean, it's unfortunate that Cade was hurt for the year because you would have wanted to see another year of development from him. But you've seen what he can do. You can see how effective a floor general he is, and you got to see also Jaden Ivey is exactly as advertised. He really started to get better as the year went on. And having two primary playmakers like that, one that is a true floor general, and the other that really is able to create gravity at the rim, getting downhill, Jaden Ivey, what he can do there. There's going to be so many opportunities for Cam Whitmore. And he's a guy that I think will have time then. He won't have to prove anything on ball. He won't have to prove like, hey, can you play make? No, like he doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to try and fix right now a massive weakness of his. He can just focus on his strengths, which is he gets the ball, the ball swings to him after Jaden Ivey's collapsed the defense, after Cade has dissected the defense, and Cam Whitmore has an opportunity, whether it's being a cutter, whether it's being a shooter. There's a guy too that shot 40% off catch and shoot, albeit on lower volume. He's able to do that, and he's able to relocate as a shooter. He's able to attack closeouts now. He's able to maybe attack some switches if Jaden Ivey and Cade are creating some chaos on offense. Like he'll just have so much more opportunities with two very good playmakers, and he won't be put on a team like maybe a team like the Rockets, where I would worry about him there. I would worry about the fit where Jalen Green is still trying to figure out how to be a playmaker, and that's probably not his future. His future is not to be a point guard / shooting guard, a guy who is going to set the table. So I think if he lands to the Pistons, I mean that's another young talent that also fits. And I mean, I'm really excited for that team. I don't know if it comes together this year, but we've seen the effect that Monty Williams can have on young players and creating culture. Talked about culture. But we saw it in the playoffs, and you got to see it from these young teams. And that could be a major difference between a team like that, a team like the Rockets, and how these young guys develop and how they accept their role. Because that's always a huge part of how these players develop for sure.
Yeah, I think Cam Whitmore, on the whole, I think he's the guy outside the top three who definitely has the highest ceiling. He definitely has the most potential in terms of offensive upside and athleticism as well. He could go from being a 2-star, potential all-star, or even the lead star on a team that can score 25 a game. He could go that way. He could go the other way too. The defense could be really lacking. The shot might not come down. He might not ever learn to be that kind of unselfish player, add that playmaking you need to really handle the ball consistently in the NBA. But I think in terms of upside, I think he's right up there as the top prospect outside of the obviously the big three. And then what about Amen Thompson then? Do you think he's another guy you want to talk about? Athleticism beyond belief. He's going to be a freakish athlete coming into the NBA straight off the bat.
I don't know if we've had the chance to talk about him enough, but just looking at fits here, just going straight, I think if the Rockets are going to take one of these guys, that's the guy I'm picking, because it's not just the athleticism. Because man, you pull that tape up and you can name very few guys who are going to be athletic as he is. You can name Zach LaVine, name Anthony Edwards. You can think about like Jaylen Brown, but even he'll be more athletic than Jaylen Brown. Like that, he is one of very few athletes that are entering the NBA. Maybe even Anthony Simons, more athletic than Anthony Simons. You pick out the most athletic young guy on any team in the NBA, and he's going to be more than that. I mean, even you watch what Shaden Sharp did in moments this season, and I think you'll be hard pressed to decide between him and Amen Thompson, like which one of them has more potential as as a playmaker, as an athlete. Because what you see Amen Thompson do as well is pass.
Yeah.
So I think that's I can't remember a player like that is so hell bent on getting the rim, so hell bent on getting in the open floor and attacking. That is actually such a good passer. That to me is fascinating. You average 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists with overtime elite. And this is all obviously all of these stats they're looking at is per 36 minutes. But per 36 minutes, he leads this draft in steals. 3.1 steals per game. And that's just a product of also what he does on the defensive end. I mean, he's a guy that is very hyper focused, sometimes too much so. It seems like he's a little bit too willing to take risks at the expense of defensive scheme. He's willing to do everything he can just to get on the break. But for a team like the Rockets that are really trying to define themselves around Jalen Green, I think this is a guy that definitely does that. He's a guy that can you just imagine like what it would take defensively to keep guys in front of a guy like Amen Thompson, a guy like Jalen Green? That sounds like a nightmare. Number one, if you miss a shot and both those guys are screaming down the court, that you can't keep up with that. You better have a rim protector that's willing to foul out of games because both those guys are willing to get to the rim. You better have a defender that's not falling asleep for a second because both those guys have crazy first steps. You better have defenders that are able to collapse because, I mean, both those guys are getting to the rim. I mean, that combination there is really exciting for me because you put athleticism on both ends of the court, and that spells trouble for opposing defenses. That spells trouble for opposing offenses too, because I think Jalen Green, with the tutelage of Udoka, hopefully he can figure things out because he's always shown effort. It's just the fundamentals. At times when games get competitive, he's shown effort, but you want to see it more. Amen Thompson, you're not questioning effort. You're not questioning his drive to be a good defender. And under Udoka, I think that could definitely happen. I mean, that this is a guy who's not only be a playmaker, but a defender and a human highlight reel. That in Houston, they could have a show, an absolute show there with Jalen Green, with Amen Thompson.
Yeah, you think the two of them playing off a guy like Sengun as well would be really cool, really fun to watch. The big thing with Thompson obviously is the shooting. That's something that is the major concern when you look at him at the moment, and it's also more so because there's very few people that seem to believe that it's going to be fixable, and are willing to take a guard that can't really shoot three or can't really pull up too much as a top 4, top 5 pick. I think it has to be the right fit, and I think you could do it in Houston. Obviously, they don't have a lot of shooters, which would maybe be the concern. But I think if you're going for fit and you're going for what he could instantly bring to the team, I think Houston is a good fit, and I think he should be in the top 5, possibly even go higher. I think there's some people that think if Portland take their pick, I think they could look at bringing him in the 3 slot. It's going to be very interesting, especially if Scoot Henderson doesn't fall. I think that's what the people are looking at. But the shot's the big thing with Amen Thompson. Outside of that, I think he's obviously still a raw talent, but one that could have an instant impact and definitely play an important role on any of these teams that are growing, especially a team like the Rockets who have already got a good young core, and their young core is ready to probably take a bit of a step at least next year.
Yeah, I think, man, actually, Amen Thompson on the Hornets. All signs point to them getting Brandon Miller there. Seems less and less likely they're going to move it, but LaMelo Ball is such a good passer. I mean, he's such a good passer, but he's not a traditional passer necessarily where like it's okay, everyone gets set, everyone, all right, pick and roll, all right, run a play, pass here. This is the formula. But he's a guy that just naturally, like when you watch him play on the court, he is playing creatively in every moment. The offense is coming to him, and he is finding angles to get people involved, and he's encouraging ball movement, not just in the open court, but in the half court as well. And that's a guy that just like magic happens. You know, him and his brother, like him and Lonzo, when the ball touches their hands and they get in the open court, when they get downhill, like they find guys open, they create offense. And to have a guy like him and Amen Thompson, the fun that you would see with those two guys in the open court, what they would do together in the half court, having two, you know, positionless guards who, you know, LaMelo's a much better shooter, obviously. Amen Thompson, you know, I'll say this, I'm not worried about the shot because there's so many players out there that have fixed their shot, and there's almost no players I can think of that, if that playmaking is real, and that athleticism is real. I mean, the playmaking, if that translates to the next level, which I believe it will, I mean, you can't name other players like that. That's something very unique. To have Zach LaVine level athleticism, first step. I mean, I think he has a better first step than Zach LaVine, legitimately. That is saying something. I think he will have one of the quickest first steps in the league the second he touches the hardwood, and for him to also be able to play make, you just don't find that. So I mean, you first of all, as an organization, you hire someone specifically to get him to be able to shoot the ball. You hire coaching to fix that, but you hope that, you know, number one, that talent does contribute in a meaningful way, and the shot finds its way there. I would not be worried about that, and I would draft him in a heartbeat. And I think athletically, I have a tough time. I know Brandon Miller is, you know, the shot is there, and you know, he's been a top tier talent for years now for a reason. I mean, he's a blue collar. He's you gotta help me out here. A blue chip. That was an noun I was looking for, a blue chip athlete for a reason. I mean, he's that guy. But I struggle to pass over the generational talent level from an athletic point of view that you get from Amen Thompson.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Obviously, one of the coolest things about him as well is that his brother is likely also going to be a lottery pick in this.
I feel bad for him. Nobody talks about Oscar. Nobody. I mean, it's only like if Oscar Thompson was the only one, like people would be, you know, talking about him too. He's not quite the playmaker. And he's, you know, also a bad shooter, excellent athlete, but he's just a slight tier below his brother. But it'll be really fascinating to see how both of them translate to the NBA. You don't know how much of it is like them, like playing with each other. Maybe there's a difference there, but yeah, it is interesting. I think the only other lottery were the Morris brothers. Were they lottery picks?
Surely were they? I don't even remember. I should think Marcus was Markeith one. I'm not even sure.
I'm looking it up. I gotta find it.
Yeah, I gotta look that up now. And
then 13.
Moving further down, what do we got? The Pacers are an interesting one who are picking top 10. I think there's two players that they're going to be looking at. They're obviously in need of a wing, and I think the main options I think they'll be looking at are Jarris Walker and Taylor Hendricks. Where do you see them going with that pick? Wing is the spot they need to fill. Where do you think they'll go?
Before I say that, Markieff Morris and Marcus Morris, 12 and 13. So they would be the second pair of twins, at least, the minimum. But speaking of forwards, I love Jarris Walker to the Pacers, just straight up. Watching his defensive film is pretty insane. It's pretty insane. If you haven't seen him already, he's 6'9", 204. He's 6'7", sorry, 250 pounds, but he's got length and he's got really good feet. I think that's one thing that really stands out when you watch this film for a guy that's 250 pounds and 6'7.5. I mean, he just flies around the court, and he has such good IQ that he's already predicting what the offense is doing next, and that processing is something that you don't always see from lottery talent. Honestly, it seems like a lot of those guys that have that defensive processing, those are typically the guys that are like in the 20s. You know, it's the more veteran players, not a 19-year-old. I mean, this is a guy who's gonna be I want to say he's gonna be 20 in the summer. I think he's gonna be 20 years old in the summer, and he's a guy that already has the defensive IQ. And that's just natural. And that is a talent. Absolutely. I think we've seen a lot of those defensive savants being more recognized for their value, being drafted higher. But what you can see him do for the Pacers is fantastic. What have we said about them? It's the offense is there. I think they created one of the most exciting offenses in the NBA this year for a young team, especially. You know, what they did, setting record threes in games at times, the amount of ball movement they had, how unselfish they were, the spacing that they created. It was just defensively and having a more dominant presence on the wing. That was tough. And I think Jarris Walker does a lot of that. I mean, defensively, him alongside Miles Turner would be amazing. You know, Walker's not going to go out there and get you 3 blocks a game. Well, Walker's going to go out there and you could switch him on to anybody. I believe. I think he could play 2 through 5. And he's going to defend in the post. He's going to be able to switch onto guards. He's going to be a very, very active guy in help defense. I mean, he's going to be able to redirect switches. He's going to redirect rotating off help. And I think getting guys that are naturally good on a team like that inspires effort, that inspires movement. When you throw 5 guys out on the court and they're not great defensively, they're not great on predicting movement and are not rotating correctly, like that inspires more of that. But having guys on the court like him, I think he could be a leader on defense for a Pacers team that are just they're pieces away. They've got talent on this team, and they've got an identity that they're building. And alongside Miles Turner, I think he and Miles Turner could really make serious strides to, elevate them. I think that we talked last year of teams that could make a significant jump because of their rookie. I'm not saying Jarris Walker is going to walk in here and, provide 15 points a game. I think he might score less than 10. But defensively, what he's going to be able to bring, I think, could be kind of that extra ingredient that they need in order to really take this team somewhere and be in the play-in at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he'll instantly come in and be almost a wing stopper. That's what they're looking at. And this guy is wing, great defense. He's going to come in and be a wing stopper. He can definitely drive them up to being closer to a top 15 defense, considering they're the 26th. They're ranked 26th in defense. He alone can come in and really drive them up that board, and that will keep them in games, that will make them more competitive. And if you see the growth from last year's rookie Mathurin again, Halliburton takes another step. And then the big question, if he can somehow hit a consistent shot, I'm not saying he has to come in and be able to drop 38-40% from 3, but if he can start to hit his shot, just get that a little bit more consistent, somewhere even around like the 35-36% mark, at least make other people guard him. He's going to get a lot of open looks the way the Pacers team are formatted, and that turns him from being a great pick at number 7 to possibly being even looking at a steal if his shot can come in consistently. But the defense that he provides, that'll be a great addition to this Pacers team, and it's a good fit alongside a elite rim protector like Miles Turner, playing with shooters like Halliburton, like Mathurin, like Hield. I think the fit is good, and I think he brings a lot of what this Pacers team need, and I think he could have a really strong instant impact. What about Taylor Hendricks then? He's another wing guy. He's going to be a really interesting player. I'm really interested to see where he lands, because this is a guy who's got size, he's got the ability to hit the 3, and he's got real good shot blocking ability. 6'10", 7'2" wingspan. this is a guy that could really be a serious role player, if not occasional all-star, if everything hits.
So players like that, like players like this, and players like we just talked about Jarris Walker. I mean, those are guys that you get excited about to go onto to teams that are building towards them, that maybe already have that star, that maybe already have that system, and they're not sexy picks. They're not guys that you're like, this guy's gonna be a future star, but they have specific applications. I mean, is there a team though that fits what he would bring and that would make sense for a player like him to go to number one, take advantage of his potential, but also like makes sense for you not to take a swing in the lottery?
I mean, it's looking like he's gonna fall to the low double, or the first of the double digits. So I mean, you look at like the Jazz, or I think the Mavs are gonna change their pick, but either of those two fits would be quite interesting. I think he's a guy that you could see going into a team that's a little bit more developed than than Utah, but at the same time, a team like the Mavs, if they have to pick, if they don't want to move on the pick, or even if he's still there on the board and the Mavs can select him and then possibly move him on, that's going to be very interesting, because I think he's a guy that can kind of have that instant impact. His shot will translate. He's got a decent shot blocking ability. He's got good size. So that's a player that can come in right away and have an impact. It's not like he's a guy you're putting pressure on to deliver you 20 points per game or anything like that. He has his role. He does what he does, and the little things are going to translate instantly. So I think the teams that are more set, rather than still looking for their main man, or looking at where they're going to rebuild from, are well placed for a guy like him.
Yeah, it's fascinating because they're Jarris Walker and Taylor Hendricks are like two different flavors of a very similar type of star role player. A defensive minded, kind of more kind of a specialist on offense. But I think if you're going to look at both of them, I would probably, you're just always going to have a little bit more bias towards a wing style player. I mean Taylor Hendricks is more kind of a prototypical, 6'8", super athletic, catch and shoot type wing, and those are not a dime a dozen. Like, this is what's so fascinating about this draft. I mean, I can't remember the last time there were this many like 6'7", 6'8", really athletic, like guys that are able to play off the dribble, are able to do other things. Just not a ton of shooting. I mean, not a ton of shot creation. Just a lot of guys that I think could be high level role player type players. And I think Taylor Hendricks definitely embodies that. I mean, getting him to, if he fell to the Mavs, you really have to think about that. I know you'd rather trade the pick. You'd rather find a partner or two. And like I said, I don't know if that could make a thing as real. That was just a crazy idea, but I don't know, something like that, where you're getting in a wing who's a little bit more ready to compete right now. But I mean, they just really desperately need young talent, and they desperately need defensive minded players. And Taylor Hendricks is probably one of the best shot blockers, best switching wings in college. And that is exactly how the Mavs want to play. I mean, I'm glad you brought them up. I wasn't sure if he would potentially fall, but I mean, to a team like that, it makes sense. To a team like the Wizards, I don't know. If he falls to the Jazz, I mean, the Jazz are seeming to be in a slower build here, but a team like the Wizards, not so sure. And I think actually, I don't know. I'm not sure if I would take him or Osser. I mean, Osser's more athletic, way more athletic. I mean, him and his brother are just on another level. But the defense that he brings for a team like the Pacers, for a team like the Magic, team like the Jazz, seems like those teams are a little bit more trying to build forward instead of taking a big swing. But maybe he shows more than that. Is he a guy that you feel like maybe has a little more upside than people are giving him credit for?
I think so. Yeah, I think his upside is quite high, and I think the limits to his game, they're there, but I think the upside is better than the downside, and I think he's gonna be one that you look back on, I think, in a couple of years and think you did really well getting this guy so late in the draft, even though he's going to be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I'll give this one quote that I think puts this in very, very, very good perspective. And this is from Sam Vecini. The number of players 6'9" or taller who enter the league as plus defenders and plus shooters is extremely minimal. And this is absolutely true. This is kind of my general thought until I put it in words. It's Jabari Smith, Franz Wagner, Trey Murphy, and Jaren Jackson since 2018. And that list is exactly true. Even though I think it's very easy to look at players and then hear the word role player assigned to them and be like, why would we take that in the lottery? But when you have a championship team, you're like, wow, we are a athletic 3-and-D wing away from being a very good team. That's why you have really good role players. I mean, he's not going to come to the league and, make crazy highlights and be a shot creator off the dribble, be doing any stuff like that. But I mean, he's a guy that for the right team, whether that's the Pacers, in the midst of this conversation, I don't know if I've just converted myself to maybe liking him a little bit more for the Pacers than Jarris Walker. But I mean, they're very limited number of guys, as clearly evidenced by that quote there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's going to be a really interesting one. I think what the Pacers do, it's a big draft for them. This is a big call for them to make. I think we were both in the feeling that they're kind of right on the cusp of something big in Indiana. Do you have anyone else then you want to mention in the top 10, or will we go for our outsiders? What do you think?
I wanna hear your sleeper.
I've got two. My safer one is Grady Dick.
Interesting. Okay. Why are you calling him a sleeper if he's going to get drafted in the lottery? Or maybe he won't. He might be someone who falls.
So maybe that's someone to fall. I think that's at the end of the day, I know you call them lottery picks and all, but like outside the top 10, I think anyone there from then on is kind of a bit of a sleeper. And I think a guy like Dick, he's a great shooter. He's got high IQ. He just knows his position. He knows how to play his position down to a T. I think he's guy who plays off the ball. He spaces the floor well. He has good anticipation off rebounds. He reads the game quite well. And it just becomes it's just all about the defense. He's shown slight glimpses of possibly the defensive attributes being there, but at this moment that's what's kind of holding him back. And I guess it's how much teams look at that and think that could be a real problem, because that's kind of the difference between him being a starter in this league or a bench player. Because I think he's going to be a guy who's capable of becoming a top 10, even 3-point shooter. I think he's going to be able to knock down his shots. And I think he knows how to play off ball really well. He can contribute without having the ball in his hands, which is always really important, especially in this modern NBA where there's so many guys that are coming in and they're ball dominant, and there's lots of teams that are playing with a single ball dominant player. I think he works well in either situation where the ball's moving quickly and moves around a lot on offense, or you're going straight to one guy. I think he can fit in anywhere. It's just a question of defense. His defense falls. He's a guy that can hold his own on the court. Then he becomes a real worry for for opponents. And there's the window for him possibly to even become maybe 1 or 2 time All-Star during his career as well. That's what I think about him.
I think I only just worry about his physicality. That's one thing with him. That's the knock. I think the shooting potential is, I think he could instantly go onto a lot of teams. I mean, if you're looking down the list, I mean, if he can fall to OKC, they are desperate for a guy who is a surgical off-ball shooter, for a guy who's great at relocating. I mean, there's a reason he's shooting over 40% off the bounce, because he's great at pump fake, relocate, shoot. He's great at coming off pin downs. He's great at as a movement shooter, and that's something absolutely. If you have a team that has the playmakers to make it work, for sure. And I mean, how far he falls could be really interesting. It depends on how some of these guys, if Keontae George, if a guy like that goes up the into the lottery, if a guy like Nick Smith Jr., guys definitely fallen in a lot of these draft projections. A lot of it having to do with his performance, I think, in the tournament, and also his size and defense. If he somehow reclaims his way into the lottery, if a guy like Bilal Labali, guy a lot of teams are looking at as a defensive specialist and a really wild card kind of play. If that guy goes up, there's definitely potential for him to fall. If he falls to a team like OKC, if he falls to a team like the Raptors, if he even falls to the Pelicans, I mean, that teams like that really need movement shooters like him. That would be huge. In terms of a sleeper, I think people would be sleeping on his impact that he could have on a team that's looking to win. I was looking at a name that I only learned about over the weekend, and I think that he's a really polarizing player. 6'10", 211 pounds, 7'2" wingspan, can put the ball on the floor, flash shooting potential, and playmaking potential. Played in big games. Leonard Miller. I don't know if you heard the name. He's a guy that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. But when you just look at his physicals, when you look that he's 19 years old, when you look that he's 213 pounds, he's not a big guy, but he's got a frame to definitely fill out. And the fact that he's averaging 17 points, steal a game, and his free throw percentage is what kind of makes you raise your eyes. I mean, that's what you look at when you're projecting out 3-point shooting. And he shot nearly 80% from the line. The guy who shot 54% from the field. So that guy, for me, just screams potential. I think obviously there's a lot of questions about whether the shooting is going to translate, whether the turnovers are tough. And yes, he had a negative assist to turnover ratio. So you always question the IQ there. But for a guy at 6'10", 213, 7'2" wingspan, to be able to put the ball on the floor, to be able to score, to potentially have the scoring potential, the 3-point shooting potential, to be a 3-level scorer at that size. I mean, that's a home run shot for me. If I'm picking right outside the lottery and he's still there, I mean, I am absolutely swinging for the fences. I mean, there's a lot of teams there. I mean, if he goes 19th, if you're looking at some mock drafts, if he goes 19th to the Warriors, that would be really interesting. I mean, I don't know how much he'd be able to grow there, but I mean, we've constantly seen people bemoan the Warriors picking up talented players, although it seems like it's not really working out for a few of them in recent memory. But I think that's absolutely a guy that team like maybe the Heat, maybe even the Lakers picking up their Rockets pick again at 20. But there are teams that are going to be able to think about taking a swing, most namely probably the Rockets, most namely the Nets at 21 and 22. But that is a guy I'm looking at. You swing for the fences. You hope that a guy with that size, with that potential, if he realizes even 80% of that is an all-star just staring at you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're very right there. I think it's obviously you see where the limitations are, and you see that's why he's not getting enough of the noise. But at the same time, the size he has, what he's been willing to do, what he's built his game around, when there's not as much pressure on him to deliver it, and when he develops that bit more, if that was to come, like his ceiling could be absolutely ginormous. Outsider guy I was looking at, and the name obviously was what originally drew me in, but Kobe Buffkin. He was an interesting one. I know this is one that was highlighted in the Athletic by the Athletic. He's a guy that is a very raw talent, but also has a lot of upside. He is a guy that I think could, in the right situation, if you knew he was going into a situation where he has 2-3 years to develop under as little pressure as possible, I think that he could really thrive. And this is a guy that showed great growth in his second year in college. He's got the ability to pass, not anything high tech, but he makes quick decisions, which is good. If he sees an open guy, he'll give him the ball. He's got great hands on the defensive end. Defense can leave a little bit to be desired, but he's got great hands. You watch his highlight reel, a lot of it is him guarding the guy one-on-one, getting a quick hand in there, getting a steal, and getting up to the other end. Scoring is there. He's shown the ability to score in the paint from three. He's shown the ability to score on contact. Then you just question, can he, the size he has is good, but he needs to develop that. He needs to get a lot stronger. And the defense, if the defense can get that a little bit more, the strength is the big thing, because I think that impacts all levels of his game. But in terms of a raw talent, this is a guy that I think teams should be keeping a close eye on. And if you're going to be willing to develop a guy like him, I think he could be definitely turn out to be a sleeper.
Yeah, I think he probably has the greatest jump in stats from year one to year two for a sophomore that I've seen in a while. And I don't know intimately the starter situation, the minute situation that he had there, but to go from 22% from three to 35% from three, to go from 0.3 assists per game to 3 assists per game, 3 points per game to 14 points per game. I mean, this guy had a crazy glow up, and I think that speaks a lot. I love seeing if you're gonna pick a guy who is a sophomore or a junior, you love to see the upward trajectory, and I think that's something that that really impressed me about Jalen Williams from OKC, is that people knocked him for being a little bit older, but when you looked at him in college, I mean, this wasn't a guy that was just like really good in college. Like these are players who have perfected their game in college, that have crafted their game and have shown you, I think, more than just being like, oh, I have potential. It's, I'm willing to get better, and I'm able to get better. I'm able to get stronger. I'm able to learn more. I'm able to become a playmaker. This guy's barely passing the ball to now nearly 3 assists per game. Obviously, we won't talk about his assist turnover ratio. That we'll just leave that alone. That's fine. But for this guy, where do you think he might develop best? A player like him, just looking at whether it's a late lottery to the early 20s, a player of his caliber, playing kind of that combo guard situation. What kind of team, what kind of player playing next to would really be a great fit for you? Like, kind of looking at his highlight reel and looking at what he's capable of, like what team would interest you to fit his needs?
In and around that mark, I think I like the look of possibly the Jazz, depending on how slow they are willing to be in their rebuilding process. Obviously, we saw that marketing come in and have that big breakout year. Does that make them kind of want to accelerate the process? If not, and maybe they look at marketing as a great guy to have around, and that if he sustains what he did, they could possibly move for another couple of young guys or a couple of picks, and then build around a younger core. I think that's kind of the area where I looked at it most, because there's not many teams around at the moment really that, like I was saying, where he could go in and have those 2 or 3 years to really develop. Because you look at a lot of the teams around and they either already have their star guy, or they are about to draft a potential generational player like the likes of the Spurs. So it's a tough one, but I think the Jazz are the one I'd probably look at the most, picking around that kind of like 16 to 20 mark.
I definitely would like to see him there. They need to find their guy who's going to be, leading their offense. Lauri Markkanen, I think could play really well alongside a true playmaker. And when he had Conley there, I think that would have been a great fit. But I'm curious if maybe, the Nets. I mean, the Nets are a team that are trying to develop around Mikal Bridges, to develop around Nick Claxton. And I think Mikal has shown a lot to not just be an off-ball threat, but to, continue experimenting with what he could do on the ball. I think finding combo guards that can work alongside him, and to not only just be a pure point and a guy who needs a ball in his hands, but someone who can kind of oscillate between both roles and also compete defensively. I think that's something that they would be happy to explore. But it would be great if you can go to Detroit, get him home. How many hometown that would be great. We always we'd love to see hometown heroes through the draft. Unfortunately, Io has not gotten as many shout outs as I had hoped he would over the years. But yeah, no, I'm excited you pointed him out as well. That was another guy that was interesting. But
got anyone else before we wrap up? Is there anyone else you want to mention or talk about?
I won't create any inflation on my shout outs that I've done here. I think those are my favorite guys. I mean, there are so many players here, and I think that's what's cool about the draft, man. You find a Bilal guy everywhere. Like there are guys who are super pumped about Bilal's potential. I'm sure you can find Anthony Black fans out there. You can find Case and Wallace fans out there. You can find people. Maybe there's a Oscar Thompson fan out there. He needs a little more love. He has not gotten any shout outs at all, I feel like, in this draft process. But there's always going to be a guy that we miss, 100%, guaranteed. And I'm always excited to find out who that is. Like, there could be any number one of these guys that ends up being the sleeper or the guy that we missed. We talk about Devin Booker, overlooked. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, overlooked. All these overlooked players ended up being great. We just saw one picked 30th compete in an NBA championship, one picked second round compete in the NBA championship. Talent comes from everywhere, but just being able to look at some of these players, I'm pretty excited with the depth of wings, and I'm pretty excited that we're definitely going to get some trades on draft night. And we didn't cover it here because, dude, there's just too many now. We thought over the weekend maybe it would get a little easier, but nope, still don't know. There's no clear indication what's going to happen with that Portland pick, especially now with Miami saying stuff like we're hopeful about Dame. So that could just take things in a completely different direction for them. But at the end of the day, man, that Thursday is going to be a fantastic time to see a lot of dreams come true and to see a lot of changes made. And yeah, it should be a fun night.
Are you brave enough to make a call? How many trades will we see in the top 10 picks?
Okay, are we doing an over under, or are we just whoever's closest?
We'll go over under. We'll be a bit general. We'll be generous.
All right.
We'll go over under.
I'll say I would set the over under on in the first round. Let's say that how many because in the second round it's going to be like somebody like typical like Bulls being like, yeah, well, Bulls don't have a second round pick to trade for cash considerations, but I'm sure people are going to do it. First round, I would say there's going to be the over under. I'll set at 3 trades. I'll set it at 3. And I will take the over. I think there's going to be a lot of movement on Thursday.
Yeah, I think that's a good mark, though.
Yeah.
I think we could easily see 2 in the top 10. I think that's very possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be disappointed if I'm not seeing at least one trade within the top 5, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
But I think that's good. I think I'd probably lean towards that as well. I think I'd probably take the over as well. But it's definitely going to be an interesting night. Like you said, dreams coming true. Possible new face for the league with Wembanyama. It's gonna be unbelievable. Make sure you tune in. Going to be very interesting with possible trades. We'll probably know whether or not Dame is staying in Portland after Thursday night. But until then, until we are back again, that's going to do it for today's episode. My thanks to Chris for joining me. Thank you all so much for listening. Enjoy draft night. I hope you enjoyed our little discussion there. We didn't go too deep into it. We didn't want to pretend we are the ultimate draft experts or anything like that, but we had fun and I hope you enjoyed listening. Remember, you like what you're hearing? Follow us on social media. We are everywhere at Coast to Coast NBA. And most importantly, remember to take every shot and love every moment.
Peace.